had a great introduction to the power of fashion when you were a child that I think helped draw you into this career. Could you tell us a little bit about how fashion became important to you even early on?
Well, for me as a child, it was just a matter of we were taught to just match. And back at this time, there was a brand by Sears. They were like Geranimals. Even when I would go in and shop with my parents, I knew if I matched the alligator with the alligator, it was a good fit, or the hippo with the hippo. So I learned early with matching clothes and colors and things like that. And I was pretty much just kept that going. It wasn't until I inherited some stepsisters who were older and a little more fashionable, and they gave me some choices. And what was the biggest impact was the difference that people responded to. And this was in junior high school. We call it junior high school. I know you all call it middle school now. And I couldn't get over all the commotion and attention that a change of clothes, the effect that it had. And I had to admit, as a teenager who was, nerdy, I liked it, and I wanted to continue that. I captured attention of the popular girls in school that normally wouldn't have not said anything to me for the most part. And they all commented. And I was like, wow, clothes. I didn't probably put it in these words, but I saw the impact of how dressing affected, even from my teachers to my classmates and just in general. So I saw that impact.
That's great. Where did you grow up? And was fashion an important part of your family? Was that something that you mentioned your sisters, but was that something that was considered important in your household as you were growing up?
I don't know if they stressed the importance of fashion, but my mother was very fashionable. She liked to dress up. She was a self-professed beauty queen. So she liked to walk in the room and make a statement. So that was always her thing. My father was very cool. I remember specifically during that time period when I was like 7 or 8, some of the clothes that he wore, were flashy, and there were popular TV shows we were watching. We could relate to it. So I know he took pride in what he wore when he went out for special occasions, but day to day, he didn't care at all. It would be embarrassing coming to school.
Okay. I can relate to that. I think my parents didn't have any kind of fashion sense, and I found it very, very embarrassing when I'd have,
to bring it to school, right? Yeah. Like when parents, I'm like, oh, please tell me he wore, something decent.
Yeah, a shirt that's not torn, or
Right. Yeah. But fortunately, both my parents were very attractive. My father, all the teachers would always comment on, he looked like Billy Williams, and is your mom around? And things like that. So it didn't matter what he wore. And he had a lot of swag.
Okay. Great. What did you want to do when you were a kid, and then what was your trajectory going into college, and what was it that you were trying to pursue?
It was basically, I started off wanting to be a doctor. We were all taught, at a very young age, the most prestigious jobs were doctors and lawyers and things like that. I never wanted to be a policeman or a fireman or those things. My father worked really hard. He was a plumber. He knew how to fix things. He had auto mechanics in his background. He self-taught with all that. He was always fixing people's cars and rebuilding projects and things like that. And I knew early on I didn't want to do that. And I was very condescending about it. He would remind me that this is what pays the bills and gives us a good lifestyle. And don't turn your nose up at hard work. And I remember one time saying to him, he said, I'm going to teach you how to change a flat tire. And I said, well, why would I need to learn how to do that? He said, because you may have a flat tire. I said, I'm going to call somebody to come and fix the flat tire. And he hated that. He wanted to break that spirit in me because I didn't want to do those things. So I patiently sat there and, watched how to do it. But yeah, definitely medical school. My freshman year in college, I got an engineering scholarship, but I was still going to just do medical. But after one semester of that, I went to the guidance counselor because I wanted to be a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you what was so funny about it. This is an old reference. It was a very, very popular show at the time. It was called MASH. So one of the characters would wear women's clothing because he was trying to be, say that something was wrong with him. So he would go in and sit on the psychiatrist's sofa. And somehow the hourly rate came out. And I was like, oh man, that is good. You can get $100 some an hour and let somebody sit on the couch and tell you their problems. Like, I want that job. But after one semester, and I saw that it was going to take like at least like 14 years, I told my guidance counselor, I said, I want to get out of here in 4. What degree pays the most graduating? And at that time it was computer engineer. So I immediately switched.
Okay. But you also worked in modeling for a bit, right? Was that before you went to college, or?
Yes, in high school, because by then I'd gotten a reputation for being fashionable, and there was some regional contest between all the high schools for fashion, and I was nominated and I won. Then I did a local fashion show. I enjoyed that. I was, really known for my runway walk. It was different. So I did enjoy that, but it was heavily discouraged. My father's like, that's not what young men do. Let's get you focused on something else. He didn't want me distracted with that. So he was not a fan at all.
Okay. But you did well. I mean, you were successful.
I did well. And then I went into the military because, again, I was paying for school myself. My parents definitely believe that you won't miss class. You'll value better when it's out of your money. And they saw this with many of their friends, how they were very nonchalant about their education. So they said, if you're serious, this is what you'll do. We're not going to mortgage the house for you to go in and chase women all day. So that was important. So then the military just offered a good option. I could get my degree. I could travel the world. They would pay for my college. I would get some training. So on paper, it just sounds like a wonderful idea.
What was it like in the military? You were in Italy? Was that like?
I was in Italy. I was in Air Force Intelligence, so that was pretty cool. Top 2% of the military. So, I've always had an elitist personality growing up. They actually sent me to the psychiatrist in the military. And the complaint was like, I didn't live in a realistic world. Like, my expectations were not. They didn't. Based on my background, they could not understand the confidence I had and just how I perceive things. Okay. So our TIs are very, they're very intimidating, but I knew going in, they couldn't hit you. Mm-hmm. They could yell at you. I knew that was to be expected. So it didn't bother me. Now, had I been, if you equate it to like going to jail and it's scared straight, that would be different. Yeah. So that's how they try to liken it to be, to like really get you in line. But when you know that they're saying cliche things like, what are you looking at? And you say nothing. Who are you calling nothing? I mean, it's just, I had heard it all before. So yeah, they had an issue with me.
Okay. Wow. All right. So you were 2 years in the armed services and.
No, I did 4 years. Day one, I knew I was going to be 4 years and done. I knew I wasn't going to be a life or anything like that. I utilized all the benefits, which were to buy a house with no money down, get a degree. I only got 2 years degree while I was in the military because the schedule was very challenging, rotating hours and not a normal 9 to 5. Right. So it was really difficult going to school and being full time in the military. It took me 10 years to get a 4-year degree, just to say it short, 10 years.
Wow. Well, talk about your journey into the fashion world. I mean, what was your experience of the modeling world like? And was that something that you wanted to come back to later on and be part of that?
It was just fascinating to me. Now, granted, at this time period, we didn't have social media. We only had magazines. There weren't a lot of publications of models that looked like me. So therefore, it was always like, could I do it? I wanted to always fantasize about it. So my first exposure were like live fashion shows, and every fashion show I would go to, I would get booked. I came back to DC after doing a 2-year stint. I modeled while I was over in Italy because I was considered exotic.
Okay.
And now I know how that works in the modeling world everywhere.
Say more about that.
So if you go to any place where 90% of the people look like they could be siblings, and then you have another 10%, everyone views that as exotic. So let's say that you're in a community where everyone has dark hair and dark eyes, because most of the world has brown eyes. So when you have that pigment change, that seems more exotic. Then you have people who have naturally lighter, blonder hair, then that seems exotic. But if you go to other places around the world where 80% of people have blue eyes and blonde hair, then maybe red hair is considered exotic, maybe a dark brunette. I've learned early on that if you're not like the norm, you can be exotic, and then you can do well in that fashion community because everybody wants something different. It took me a long time to get that.
Okay. Okay. Did you have a positive experience when you were modeling, or were there challenges that you had to face?
Oh, most of the experiences are not positive in comparison. So for like every home run, you strike out about 20 or 30 times.
Okay.
And it's difficult. So I try to, as a director, to be very sensitive to the mental health of model talent because we live in a different world. And it's the only career field I compare it to dating all the time, which is, not a good comparison, but I put it in this sense. As a gentleman, if you go out and you ask someone to date, out on a date or to dance, I remember in high school I asked people to dance and, sometimes she said yes, sometimes she says no. So when she says no and you're walking back across the gym floor, you feel a certain type of way. In modeling, that happens. And it always comes down to you don't have the look that they want. And it's almost impossible not to take that personal. Mm-hmm. So even today, I did a fashion show last night and I saw disappointment on models coming in. Like one particular model, she's short. And he said, someone said you were looking for a short model. I said, I don't know how anyone could have thought I said that because I would never say I was looking for a short model. And then I realized how they came out. So I said, I said I had a short dress, but I don't have short models. And she was very, I could see she was disappointed and, they get excited, they get excited about one model for you, which I consider an honor. But I have an aesthetic that I want for my brand. And I pretty much sticks to it in terms of the type of models I want, the type of look I want. And that's important. And that's important to all designers. It's not a sympathy thing. It's about marketing, branding.
Yeah.
So the same skill set, if you're hiring an engineer, they need to have this skill set, these programming skills, or be familiar with these applications. You need that. So if you don't have those things, it's not as disappointing. You may still want the job, but it's disappointing. But when it's based on your appearance, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too skinny, you're too fat, or all those things, that's really hard on a model. And I get that. So we try to be delicate in our responses.
Yeah, because you can't change those things about yourself. You can't grow a few inches so. But for yourself, when you were in the modeling industry, could you talk about things that maybe challenges that you faced or ways in which you learned to become resilient or practices that you developed there that helped you?
Well, I didn't do it the practical way. Like most people, got some training, which I definitely value. They get some professional photos, which I didn't start off with. You don't need them, but all these are assets if you have them. If you can already show the client what you could look like, that's beneficial. But for some, they have the skill set to just look at a fresh face, no makeup, plain clothing, and realize that this person has supermodel potential. But it's easier to convey when you see them dressed like a supermodel and all glammed up, and they can show some variety. So that will always trump the basic Polaroid shot.
You mentioned sort of dealing with rejections. Was that something that was difficult for you to learn how to do, or were you able to do that pretty easily, or how was your experience?
It was hard. It was hard initially because you're not having the right look. You don't know what that means. Like, are you not tall enough? Are you not light enough? Are you not dark enough? You're not ethnic enough. It was a different time. I remember going on a casting call and they wanted me to change my vernacular. And I read the script and they were like, okay, now go in here. And he goes, I want you to be really, really black. And I'm like, what does that mean? Because I found it very condescending.
Yeah.
He was going in through the language. It was like very stereotypical, whatever casting. And I said, well, what time period is it? Because that's not what that community, that's not how they talk. As an authority, that's not regular dialogue, in any community. It's just not. So I remember that being difficult. Like you're trying to tell the director what to do and correct his script. Yeah. That didn't go over well with my agent. But sometimes you have to give them direction because sometimes they don't know. And it's not a bias thing. It's just what they've not been exposed to it. That's the difference, But it's hard. Rejection is hard. And when a lot of it is based on physical appearance, that really, really hurts because there's nothing you can do about it. And that's what you hear. No, those are no's or no's. So you hear a lot more no's than yes. So One, it does build character and confidence. So when you do land something, you feel really, really good about it. You really can celebrate, but you learn from it, because sometimes you can ask for feedback to see, is there anything I could have done different? And then if the answer to that is no, then you know you're not the person for that job. And you have to live with that. You have to just be, okay, I'm not the person.
Yeah.
And same thing if you're in the dating world, as I compare to dating, sometimes you're just not the other person's type. You know, they may want a bad boy. They may want this. They may want that. And if you're not that type, you're just not that type. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. How did you get into designing? Was that something you did as a kid? Were you?
I had no aspiration to design at all. So most of my problems in the fashion industry have been just from an engineering background. When you have a problem, you look for a solution. When I was modeling, I wanted to model, in a bigger platform. So I started teaching at a modeling school that had the parent company Elite that would come in and do the scouting once a year. So that's why I did that, and then training also helps you with your skill set. For doing a fashion show, I was working with designers. I had a designer kind of put me against the wall with demands at the very last minute. And I had to give in. And I hated that. I hated that I had to do that. So then I started designing some stuff. So I was, well, at least I will have a designer in case it doesn't work out with others. And I worked really, really hard on it. And as a result, in terms of career-wise, I have surpassed all of those designers now. They come back and they all remember back in the day where we were starting off. So that was the only reason for that. Creating Fashion Week, there was an opportunity for the designers in DC to have a platform to introduce themselves to the fashion community, because there wasn't one here. Mm-hmm. So then I created Fashion Week to do that. So everything was always a result of seeing a problem and then trying to find a resolution for it. And then it moves you to the next step.
Beauty at Work is brought to you by Templeton Religion Trust. If you enjoyed this clip, go check out the full episode. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps get the word out about the show. Thanks, and see you next time.